A group of teenagers hurt a small puppy and set it on fire, but they couldn't destroy its loving nature. When Chunky the Chihuahua disappeared from his home, his owners didn't know how bad things were. Some mean kids took him and hurt him a lot before leaving him to die. But even though these kids hurt Chunky's body, his spirit stayed strong. Chunky lives with Lisa Marie and Bonnie Lee Fiddle in Margate, England. In February 2015, some bad people took Chunky from their backyard. The two sisters were really sad about losing Chunky, but they didn't know how terrible things would get. When the Fiddle sisters logged into social media in the hours following Chunky's abduction, however, they discovered the terrible truth. 4 teenagers had snatched the animal, brutally tortured the canine, and boasted about their crime online. We went on there to find a picture of our dog burned in statuses saying how the boys had done this and how they had done that. They were proud of it, Bonnie Lee told the BBC. Heartbreakingly, though, Chunky's captors had not just set him on fire, they had also fed him drugs, kicked and punched the animal, and broken his leg and neck. When they had completed their brutal tirade, the despicable youths left the dog for dead on a local landfill site. But amazingly, Chunky somehow survived. Thankfully, for the little dog, a member of the public found him injured on the trash pile the following day. The kind stranger alerted the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, RSPCA, and, of course, the charity swiftly began an investigation into the horrific incident. The Facebook evidence, in particular, surely repulsed the RSPCA officers. Chunky was found with a broken leg and neck and with burns all over his face and eyes. RSPCA Inspector Caroline Doe said in a statement released on Facebook, he must have suffered horrendously for hours as the senseless torture took place for the amusement of these boys. What was perhaps even worse was the fact that Chunky suffered for days after he was dumped, literally left for dead on his own to wander next to the fast road. And even though he was less than a year old, Chunky now found himself teetering at death's door. It's a miracle he survived, Doe added in her Facebook statement. I'll never forget how terrified and depressed he was when I first saw him. The injuries were so severe that despite the fantastic veterinary care and medication he was on, the medication was unable to numb all the pain, and he suffered for at least 6 days, according to veterinary experts. Meanwhile, the 4 teenagers responsible for Chunky's suffering later pleaded guilty to animal cruelty at the Folkestone Youth Court. Their punishment included a 5-year prohibition on keeping animals, a 12-month referral order, and a fine of almost $2,500 each. In addition, the father of one of the boys had to pay about $7,000. Inspector Doe, for her part, also expressed her outrage with the culprits in her statement. Of all things, sends shivers down my spine, she added. The defendants may have been young and confessed to being under the influence of drugs, but the cruelty they inflicted on this dog was extreme, barbaric, and inexcusable. The 4 defendants cannot be publicly named due to their ages. They were 15 and 16 at the time of the attack. In the meantime, though, Chunky made an incredible recovery and returned home to his owners. Thankfully, he's now been restored to health and returned to his loving owners, Doe concluded. Though I fear he will always be timid and nervous as a result of his ordeal, and I imagine the owners will never quite be able to come to terms with what was senselessly and needlessly inflicted on their beautiful family pet. However, Chunky's ordeal understandably still troubled his owners, even after all the suspects had been brought to justice. We didn't want it to be true when we first heard it, Bonnie Lee told BuzzFeed. It's hard to think about it. It really angers us to know someone can inflict pain on such an innocent animal. Chunky's suffering shocked many more than the Fiddle sisters. For example, after reading about the event, Maxine Berry was spurred into action. In her opinion, the punishment set out for the guilty teenagers had not been enough. As a result, Berry then set up a petition on Change.org campaigning for greater punishment for animal abusers. Writing on the page, she explained, as an animal lover who once owned a dog just like Chunky, I found this story highly upsetting. What shocked me is that these abusers and others like them will be able to own an animal again one day. The petition called for anyone who abuses animals, regardless of their age, to be placed on an animal cruelty register which would follow them for life. It continued, a 5-year ban is not sufficient. It's hard to implement in practice, and how can we assume abusers' attitudes will have changed after a few years? Berry entitled the online call to action Justice for Chunky, and evidently, many agreed with its words. By March 2016, in fact, over 500,000 people had signed the petition. When Barry receives 1 million supporters, she'll deliver her appeal to UK Prime Minister Theresa May. What's more, word about the petition soon reached the Fitzall sisters. Moved by the cause, they decided to reach out to Barry and join forces in their fight against animal cruelty. Barry said yes, and the people who care about animals promised to keep talking to each other. Then, in March 2016, Barry and the Fitzall sisters took the list of names and requests to a place in London called Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, or DEFRA. This was an important moment in Barry's mission, and she felt very touched by it. She told BuzzFeed, "I hope we can make things better for animals in the future with Chunky's list." At the same time, someone from DEFRA said, "We really love animals in our country, and we have the best rules to keep them safe. If someone is mean to an animal or doesn't take care of it, they might not be allowed to have an animal anymore, and they could get in trouble and have to pay a lot of money or go to jail." Right now, though, the rules about hurting animals in Britain haven't changed, but maybe Barry and the Fitzall sisters will make a difference with their campaign on the internet, because the people who hurt little Chunky might be allowed to have their own pets soon, and that's why Chunky's owners and supporters want to keep working hard.